Konstigt. Ja, det är bara en knapp för en. Hello and most welcome to 1859. We have presently a lockdown on internet here at the usual place of recording. So we will today do it in another fashion. This is 859 of the H series. And we will continue the previously started 1856. And we have began to go into private language and the thesis of a private object. And the much forgotten paragraph 142 has been brought up by Francis Wittgenstein. And it's about measuring and scaling. And we learn there a most important lesson. And that is that scaling and measuring, understanding something is a shared practice. One could say, and this is my expansion of it, that the exactness in the movement of the participants, how they handle the scale, that is what makes for the exactness. Not only the scale, but practice and scale in a complementary action. There is an example coming from the philosopher of science, Paul Feyerabend, who worked in close connections to the one working down in CERN. And he said that the exactness of doing something, the hand skill, the chirality, if you like, that was the thing that made the Higgs boson spring into existence. There's a close cooperation between man and machine. And I recall now, once mentioning it, that the Hubble telescope is also quoted by, in a quote by Feyerabend, that it was the skill of Hubble that made it possible for him to see the things, the stars, the galaxies, the constellations that he duly noted was a close connection between handiness and, for that time when Hubble lived, the most advanced telescope there ever been, but at the same time, a telescope that needs maneuvering, because compared to later varieties, it was still incredibly simple. That was only made possible by the skill of Hubble. So that blurs the distinction between the holiest of divisions in academia, or thinking in general, I'd say, also a big part of science. The holy division between theory and practice. They are truly intertwined, and trying to separate one from the other will inevitably always lead to attenuation of both practice and theory. A second aspect here is that what Wittgenstein gives to us here, and especially in 142, the gift of the cheese, it makes it possible for an understanding of an objective world shared by everyone, where measuring needs to be exact, to be valid. But still, we can have those things, but we do not have to cope with the unnecessary extra thing of the burden of an exterior independent world and private definitions, the inner world, corresponding inner detached world. So I think without this, well, not only this paragraph, but let's use this as an example. Without the understanding on 142, all claims of things that are either Charybdis, materialism, or Scylla, that will be idealism, they would be nonsensical. And any claim to free will, once the understanding of 142 is not established, if it is not established, will be intellectually dishonest. And the example is also including the possibility that the lumps of cheese are getting bigger or smaller, disappearing, and so on. If that were to happen, the scale wouldn't work. So there is an exterior world still participating. I realize I need to do one thing here. So where does exactness stem from? Well, it's, so to speak, skill related. The development of the modern day much advanced technology that we have has taken centuries. This is one of the things that we forget. It has taken centuries. It didn't evolve by itself in an instant. When I went to school, I, as a young child, had no chance of knowing that. I was presented with the facts, so to speak. And then I'd say it's quite natural to establish a difference between theory and practice. And you forget collectively, I think that's the word, that all of technology, all of advancement, the penicillin, atomic reactors, submarines, medication against acne, you name it, all those things have a long history of skilled hands, skilled bodies that participated and did things. We are standing on a Mount Everest of actions, and that is those actions, little by little, adding fractally to make measurement more exact. You can compare that to my childhood delusion, if you like. It's a bit strong. But the perception I, as a naive young boy, had was that I didn't know what had been going on for all these centuries, establishing everything. That is what we mistaken for theory only. They are all done at some instance. So with that rather enlarged summary, needed to calm my nerves here after the Wi-Fi disappeared and it's still gone. I'll just put some liquid in my cup and begin. We are presently on page 9. Kalle could write in the column what the page is in the book. Yes. And we've been talking about Empfindung, and we mentioned red here, how red is perceived, learned. One way is most definitely, and I would say obviously, the ostensive definition, but also a sort of comparison.
Page 147. 147.
Thank you.
147.
147. What goes for pain also goes for any other sensation. I have discussed the sensation itch.
It.
I think we can do that with the next figure. Still a bit disconcentrated here. The cases with sensations of touch, for instance, feeling hot or cold, and those of smell, for instance, fragrance and stink, are also easy to understand. The case with sensations of color is also the same. The private speaker has no natural primitive ways of showing seeing colors. Showing him red or green never makes any difference in his reactions. For instance, pointing, clapping, staring, lighting up of the eyes, etc. There's no way for others or for himself to tell whether he sees is red or green. So to generalize, when the private speaker claims he has a sensation of the type S, he has no way to tell whether it is really a S or say a T. So we can arrive at parenthesis, private sensations, and parenthesis. The speaker has no criterion of correctness for using a private sensation word. This is what Wittgenstein says in PI 258. But in the present case, I have no criterion of correctness. One would like to say whatever is going to seem right to me is right. And that only means that here we cannot talk about right. I will call private sensation, parenthesis, the no criterion of correctness thesis. It is obtained through looking at how sensation words are used in ordinary life and used by the private speaker who has no natural primitive expressions or reactions of sensations whatsoever. This result is one of a grammatical investigation. And everyone would agree to it after going through the investigation. So it is a thesis in the sense of PI 128. I think that this is Wittgenstein's proof of the no criterion correctness thesis. The proof is simple and direct, and everyone who sees it can agree to it. It is my view that Wittgenstein It is my view that Wittgenstein regards the proof as being simple and direct. There are two reasons for holding this view. One reason is that this view can explain why he does not write much about it. He simply has no need to do so. Another reason is as follows. Concerning the private use of color terms, Wittgenstein remarks, it is easy to see that we would have no use for these words, that is, seeing red, if their application was severed from the criteria of behavior. Notice Wittgenstein's words. It is easy to see here. Clearly, he thinks that this remark can be agreed to by everybody easily. In the above interpretation of the Wittgenstein's proof of the no criterion of correctness thesis, I paid a special attention to PI 142, where the cheese example serves as an object of comparison. The private speaker has no criterion of correctness for using his private terms, just as there is no criterion of correctness for determining the weight of a lump of cheese in the imagined scenario. The close relationship between PI 142 and the PLA is obscured by the distance in PI between these two parts. The reason being the PLA is commonly taken to be located in PI 243 to 315. But such a close relationship is evident in LPE 234 and 239. There Wittgenstein first introduces the diary example, in which a person records the occurrence of a particular color sensation, red, but I could use language just for making entries in my diary and without ever having learned it. I could have invented a name for a particular color sensation. Say the name red, and then used this name to note down whenever I had a color sensation. That means you would play a private language game with yourself. the person claims to give himself a private, ostensive definition by pointing inwardly to the sensation. This is from LPE 234-235. Wittgenstein questions whether the private speaker has a criterion of correctness, writing, from LPE 238. But in ostensive defining a word for myself, I impress its meaning on me so as not to forget it later on. But how do you know that this helps? Do you know later on whether you remember it rightly or wrongly? Shortly after this comes the cheese example. We use the form of expression, the weight of the body, to designate something inherent in the body. Something which could only be diminished by destroying part of the body. The same body, the same weight. And this is a grammatical proposition. Supposing what in fact is the rule became the exception under certain peculiar circumstances, indeed a body kept on weighing the same, say iron, in the presence of mercury. A piece of cheese, on the other hand, though keeping its size, calories, etc., weighed different weights at different times, unaccountably, would we still, ... and sad. Wittgenstein's point here is obvious. This, in the imagined scenario where a piece of cheese changed its weight unaccountably, we would have no criterion of correctness for using the expression the weight of this body. Immediately after this, Wittgenstein writes from LPE 239. On the other hand, it seems if there wasn't the behavior of toothache, this sentence, although also incomplete, clearly indicates that Wittgenstein means to say that there would be no criterion of correctness for using the word toothache if there were no behavior of toothache. I think that Wittgenstein means that this applies to the word red tooth. As he in the LPE talks intensively about both red and pain or toothache. It is evident that the cheese example is used to help us see that the private speaker lacks a criterion of correctness for using his private words. To sum up, the no criterion of correctness thesis follows directly from the no natural expressions feature of private language. The thesis is a grammatical one, meaning at least two things. First, the thesis is about the use of the private words. It says that the private speaker has no criterion of correctness for using his sensation words. Because he has no natural expressions for the sensations. Second, it should be agreed to by everyone. Five, next subchapter. Charge my cup. A further consequence, 5, the senselessness of private language. Now that the private speaker has no criterion of correctness for using his private words, what can we say about them? The following passages by Wittgenstein are highly relevant to the question. Consider the proposition, this is from LPE. Consider the proposition. He makes sure what is meant to him by. Would you say that the word had meaning to him if it meant something else every time? And what is the criterion of the same color coming twice? If we describe a game which he plays with himself, it is relevant that he should use the word red for the same color in our sense. Or would we also call it a language game? If he used it anyhow, then what is the criterion for using it in the same way? Not merely the connection between same color and red. What these passages say is that there must be a criterion of correctness for using the word red. If a person used red anyhow, or used it to refer to something else every time, then we would not say that his word red has a meaning. Furthermore, we would not say that the word has a meaning for him either. In this case, the meaning of red cannot be established, and the word is senseless, meaningless. This applies to names, nouns, or noun phrases in general, not only to names of color, but also to the names of other sides, other things, such as tables, chairs, thinking, understanding, etc. So in effect, Wittgenstein here reminds us of the following rule. And a name must have a criterion of correctness for its use. Otherwise, it is senseless. N is a grammatical rule, for it governs the correct use of name. Any name must satisfy N in order to have a meaning. Everyone who speaks of a language must agree to this. In other words, the rule N is indisputable. Even a philosopher of the Cartesian bent has to accept N. If he wants to use names to talk with sense about things. For example, if such a philosopher or any other person says that he sees red, if he says that he cannot be sure which objects are red and which are not red, then his word of red is senseless. And we put a little stop here by the word senseless. We progressed 2 pages. So senseless in the 3rd paragraph from the end.
Page 149. Page 149.
149, thank you very much. I will be back for some quotes here. Let's see. Being only 2 pages, it makes it easy, I would think, since it's Wittgenstein. I think about the Fawlty Tower episode when Mr. Fawlty tried to explain to Manuel that there was a pigeon in the water tank. And Manuel opted for a pig in the tank and many different things. And it was almost like he refused to understand. Well, he didn't have a criterion for things. He was new in Britain. And oddly enough, I don't know where he got that from. I don't know how he got in contact with Wittgenstein. He said, it's not bloody Wittgenstein, man. That by that indicating it is comparatively easy. It's called a hypothesis, an understatement. And the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 paragraph. I'm sorry for not showing the text. It's, so while we're doing it over the mobile, and I still don't know how you share screen on the mobile. This is for
page. Which page?
This is page 9.
Thank you. Set paragraph is set. Set paragraph. Okay.
And let's see here. This is why we need pain reaction to understand pain or pain concepts. It's very hard to count the paragraphs here. This is a bit 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. They're all very short. It's the site from PI 258. But in the present case, I have no criterion of correctness. One would like to say, whatever is going to seem right to me is right. And the only means that we here can't talk about right. And that only means that here we cannot talk about right. Why is that? There is no pointing, there's no criteria, there are no indications, there are no hurting knees, there is no doing, there's no action whatsoever. There is therefore no criteria, and that goes for cheese, that goes for the Higgs boson, and goes for everything. In the penultimate paragraph, a shorty, it is easy to see that we would have no use for these words that is seeing red if their application was severed from the criteria of behavior. And that's a grand sight. It nullifies, it shreds brain in the vat. I'm sorry, Hillary Putnam. It's gone. A brain in the vat has zero criteria. And therefore it cannot think, cannot sense, it cannot perceive. It simply is a new thing. And here we have the idea of private sensation. Let's go to the next page. And I'll just read the first line here. It's a very helpful pedagogical thing to remember. In the above interpretation of Wittgenstein's proof of the no criterion of correctness thesis, that's what you have. There is no criterion for correctness. The words will not, however much you like them to, have any significance. It is like playing tennis with a racket that doesn't have a net. It doesn't have a string. So every time you hit the ball will go right through your racket. The strings are not a supplement or something unnecessary added. Our human actions are ingrained in language. They're not superfluous. We are not actors, as Descartes thought, that move like robots. Yeah, actually his descriptions of human beings is very close to robots. And they move without any free will. We can go further down on page 10. So then we have the cheese example, something very similar to it from LPE. That's about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 paragraphs. some of them are just one line. We use the form of expression, the weight of this body, to designate something inherent in the body, something which could only be diminished by destroying part of the body. The same body, the same weight. And this is a grammatical proposition. So you see, this is a development in language that has happened long time ago, and it's very similar to the Newtonian development, and it's a grammatical proposition. It's not out there in the world. It would be grammatically incorrect to say that the cheese has changed size. You will probably be tricking somebody when you work in the cheese shop. So that person will not receive his due amount of cheese. You put off Hector and said, I don't know what happened. It seems that the cheese has diminished. No, that is a grammatical error. There is no need to look at the scale because you're breaking the rule. Remember that when you go to the cheese shop. And here he continues with the next little paragraph. Supposing what in fact is a rule became the exception under certain peculiar circumstances, indeed, a body kept on weighing the same, say, iron in the presence of mercury. A piece of cheese, on the other, though keeping its size, calories, weighed different weights at different times, unaccountably. Would we still have the weight of the cheese? Would the grammar collapse? And the answer is obviously, then we have no criterion for correctness. So we are participating in the world, we are in it, but it is not disjunct from us. We measure. There is a person behind it. Our skill, our hands, our eyes, our smells, our body, they are included. And this is something even Descartes has to agree on. Otherwise, his words wouldn't mean anything. Go to page 11. A further consequence, that chapter and the third paragraph, and the penultimate sentence in that following. Then what is the criterion for using it in the same way? Using the word red is talking about. Not merely the connection between same color and red. It's not enough with a lexical definition. The word red is not only its relations to the above word, the category word color, and same red, and the word red. To this, you could also add the word yellow to distinguish it. But that is not merely it. It is action, it's pointing, it's all the past that happened before that enormity. So we are very much engaged in the world. And facts don't fly about like this, like butterflies or colibris. and go to the penultimate paragraph here, or the third one from the end. Even a philosopher of Cartesian bent has to accept N. That's the rule for correctness. You have criterions of doings. Even a philosopher of the Cartesian bent has to accept N if he wants to use names to talk with sense about things. No one can escape the N rule, not even Cartesius. No one. So this is what Wittgenstein is pointing to. I only claim what everyone can agree to. Okay, Kalle, let's try this. Let's see if I can hear you first.
Hello,
See if I can hear you. Speak up.
do you hear me?
No, not so good.
Hello, paragraph 142. Do you hear me?
Little bit louder, please.
Paragraph 142.
Yes.
Let me repeat. The procedure of putting a lump of cheese on a balance and fixing the price by the turn of the scale would lose its point if it frequently happened for such lumps to suddenly grow or shrink for no obvious reason. This remark will become clearer when we discuss such things as the relation of expression to feeling and similar topics. We discussed already the previous time the relation of this remark with the measuring problem in quantum physics, Hans.
Yeah, definitely.
Or so that he says that they do not, let me rephrase, they do not, so I rephrase it. They do not normally.
Could you put the microphone closer to the mouth and speak up a bit?
They do not normally grow and shrink. Wittgenstein says that they do not grow and shrink for an obvious reason. Do you agree?
Yes.
So we cannot
and-
actually juxtapose this to the measuring problem in quantum physics, or can we? They do, there is a small change between one measurement to another. Don't you agree?
I think
I don't know.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I agree. But maybe you can see it like this. For instance, let me come up with something here. There is in the universe a sort of grammatical rule, and that includes you as an observer, and the grammatical rule also includes a sort of instrument. If one instrument is chosen by me, Hans, that establish a rule. So what I see will be a wave. What I get will be a wave. So there is a grammatical rule there. And it decides whether there is a wave or a particle. Because if I choose some other machinery like this one, that will actually give me a particle. So it will change reality as we speak of. The classical physical reality will change according to what rule we are following. But we are still following a rule.
Indeed. But let me revert this. So we can use this both, so we can use this for quantum physics. Even quantum physics agrees that C's do not suddenly grow or shrink for an obvious reason. Of course, there are exceptions, but normally even quantum physics would agree. C's do not suddenly grow or shrink for an obvious reason.
Not usually.
No. So even quantum physics is in accordance with here, with classical physics. But I think there is an implication implicitly, since he's speaking about feelings in the next phrase, that as feelings change, also measurements can change.
Yeah. So
And
you can call the feelings your measuring device.
absolutely,
According
absolutely.
to how you feel your pain, the pain would be different, so to speak.
Absolutely. And in everyday life, it's not that for an obvious reason I don't become suddenly sad. Or you understand? So in everyday life, feelings are relatively stable. Of course, we can to laugh, but then we have a reason. We don't have a reason to laughing. Do you hear me well, Hans?
Yeah. Somewhat. Well, yeah.
Somewhat. I don't know if the microphone is from the video camera or if it's still this one from headphones. Hope it's from the headphones. And you mentioned at the beginning Fawlty Towers. There's actually another episode.
I like that episode.
There is actually another example which is more appropriate. I don't know if this is the same episode, it could be, but you have there the hotel inspector.
Oh yeah.
And
It's a good one.
the servant there has Manuel, he has a rat. And in order to so Mr. Basil, he wants to catch this rat before the inspector comes.
Oh yeah.
So he puts out some cheese.
Did he?
Yes, indeed. If I remember. I think we should take as a lesson to rewatch all the Fawlty Tower episodes to refresh our memory. And I ask myself if Wittgenstein took the example with cheese because it's a little bit fun with cheese. Or if Wittgenstein was a gourmet. No, he was absolutely no gourmet. I know that. He lived a very Spartan life. In philosophy investigations, the word cheese occurs only once. But we have it.
The word cheese occurs, what did you say?
Only
Sorry,
once. Only once.
Only once.
But in his writings, so you have also this. Now I speak about the philosophy investigations, but you have also cheese occurs a second time in here. Let me see. We have it today also in. Let me see. But we have this LPAE. Cheese occurs also in LPE. We use the formal exponent weight of this body. So here we have the cheese. We have it again, but in another writing by Wittgenstein.
Okay.
Not it matters too much, but who cares how many times the word cheese occurs in Wittgenstein's corpus? But I think it's. But here, so Wittgenstein was writing here before travels to the space, and there we know that bodies, even cheese, lose their weight. But there are exceptions from our point of view.
Yeah, in space, one could say maybe, I don't know, another rule applies to weight. and we sort of assume it somehow theoretically is keeping its weight, although it's weightless up there.
Indeed. And what is the relevance for Wittgenstein's point is that we use words, there are rules, criteria. I have to always use the red in the same way, otherwise the word would lose its meaning. And also cheese, I have to use the word cheese in the same manner. Although sometimes there are exceptions like cheese, and then you take a picture.
Yeah.
But they are extended or exceptions to the rule.
Yeah, the rule is the thing that that benefits us, and the rules, the more we follow them, the more they give to us. I think yesterday we were just surfing a bit about Ian McGilchrist, and it was a suggestion that Descartes might have been a schizophrenic.
Yes.
He didn't, well, I don't know if it's true or if there are any such indications, but when you lose your connections to the doings of the world, you do actually go ill. You don't have to end up a schizophrenic, but your words become less valuable to other people. They will listen to you less and less. So not being in contact with all the doings of the world, your words slowly loses their force, so to speak. It's an ongoing process. This is very close to Barbara Tversky, who showed that the more precise thinkers used their hands much more when they were presented with a very complicated thinking problem. And she filmed them not knowing. She was very cunning. A cunning Barbara. And when they thought they were alone, they used their hands to show how relations were, and something was above and something was inward. And then they understood. Stop using your hands or using them in a manner less skilled. Understanding will also be less. I think there's a nice connection to the pain and understanding the word pain. This is more complex. This one is related to this one. You can write in the mobile. I do this to understand what the mobile does.
Yes, and I think, to return to the cheese, that somebody should write a research paper with the title Wittgenstein and the Problem of Cheese. And
yeah, definitely.
Perhaps baptize this video to the give it title Wittgenstein and cheese.
Yes. And
Perhaps we should end there with this happy.
Yeah, I was just thinking maybe it should be subsidized by some Austrian cheese
company.
Yeah. Well, okay, thank you very much, Kalle Lundahl, for your comments. Great as always. Thank you everyone for putting up with this experiment, since we didn't have any wiring or any connection. This is the first time I ever do a Zoom on a mobile. And well, we'll see what happens. I don't even know where it's going to be stored. That's going to be a surprise. But have a very pleasant day, morning, afternoon, wherever you are. Bye-bye for now.